All right. Here we go. So this is Ignite. Okay. We're going to run this for either 5 or 6 weeks. We're going to try and squeeze it in as best we can before the end of the year and everyone takes off for the holidays. Okay. So what we're going to cover today is basically like just a general outline of what a deal looks like, what a transaction looks like for a particular buyer. Because anytime we go through this, everyone always has questions and you want to see how it works and you're going to want to understand like how this all goes into like starting a real estate career. But I found that the best way is to really just look at one deal from start to finish. And then the two topics that we're really going to talk about though are like sparking your career and how you go about doing this, and mainly embracing your job. So what being a good real estate agent is not is, dressing up a certain way and like showing off to your friends and like being on Instagram and stuff like that. That does not make you actual money. It can help grow your spirit, can help you generate leads, but that's not what makes you an actual, in my opinion, a really good agent. So we'll talk about each of these two things today, but really next course, which will be Wednesday from 2 to 4, is when we're going to walk through everything of like, okay, this is actually how you get started. This is where you get your leads from. This is how you build your database. For today, it'll be a little bit more like question and answer oriented, but I'm going to walk you guys through a lead that I have right now. It's like an actual buyer. He's all cash. He's looking for single family rentals to invest in, right? And I know a little bit of information about it, but I'm basically going to walk you through this whole process and we'll see what that would look like from start to finish. I'm going to try and get it done in time today, and if not, then I'll pick it up next week, because basically when you first get started, you want to know like, okay, how does MLS work? How do I navigate some of these things? How do I actually go about taking this lead or this relationship and turning it into actual money? And what does that look like? So that's kind of what we're going to walk through today. So let me take this screen share off real quick and I'll show you guys. Stop sharing. Pause it for a sec so we can take a look at this. Okay, so this particular investor is looking for single family rentals, right? They said that they want them in good high school areas. They have up to $4 million to place. They want them to rent fast. And they want to buy 2 or 3 properties. So a lot as we go through this course, I'm going to reference this like sliding scale, in my opinion. You have below average agents. You have average agents. You have good agents. You have great agents. And then you have agents that are elite. So as I'm going to encourage you and as you're going through this course, try to think about, okay, how I use my time when I communicate with this client. And as I'm developing out my business plan, or I'm working on my database, or I'm marketing, make a decision which type of an agent you want to be, right? And We're gonna cover the listing presentation a little bit in the next class, and you'll see like where this really starts to play a role. But you'll also decide that you may not have the time to be an elite agent in every facet of your business. You may not have the resources to be an elite agent in every facet of your business. So if I said we're gonna have an elite marketing campaign for my new listing, right? What's that look like? Right? We could do postcards, we could do flyers, we could do a drone video. I could put it in the caravan, right? I could spend $50,000 on an open house, right? So before I know it, I'm at 50 grand. If I just got started, right? Like hiring the best photographer and throwing this big party and getting it in the double page ad and caravan and all these other things, that's gonna be a little too difficult for me to do that if I'm just getting started and I'm not ready to cut a check like that, right? So if I'm not gonna have this big blown out listing presentation, I'm not gonna market my new listing to the world, I'm not gonna list this on a foreign exchange site, right? Then like maybe I'm gonna decide to just, do a pretty good job with the marketing. But maybe when I get to my cold calls, right, I'm gonna be elite there. You're gonna find that as your business builds and as your career develops, time is gonna be the greatest factor, right? If I had 80 hours in a week, I would do a lot more deals. I'd close a lot more business. I'd have more relationships. I'd spend a lot more time doing things that are gonna generate revenue and produce income, right? So as we go through this, try and decide like where you wanna fall here, right? So for this investor, this is just the basic criteria that I was given. So it was a referral from a client, which is great, right? It's the best thing you want is when someone calls and says, I have someone who's going to give you business, right? If you do a really, really good job, someday down the road, maybe all of your business can come from referrals, right? You can be that person that's on the golf course or on vacation, you're closing deals, you don't really know where this came from, you get a lead, and that person says, hey, I'm shopping for a $10 million home, and you have an opportunity to show this person houses and close them, right? The relationship's already there, there's already trust, they already know who you are, right? And they're willing to work with you just based on this referral that you got, okay? So why do I bring up this like sliding scale, right? It's because when we get a lead like this or an opportunity like this, how much time do you think I should spend, right, working on this before I send something to this particular investor? Should we spend an hour looking at properties? Should I spend 10 minutes looking at properties? Should I spend a few hours or a few days? Right? It's all, what'd you say?
I would say it depends on the farm, what area you specialize.
Depends on the farm, depends on the area I specialize in, right? So what I'm gonna say is, and I'll cover this a lot and we'll talk about it a bunch, there's an inverse relationship between being diligent and annoying. There's a certain amount of work and time and effort that you can put into this assignment with this limited information, right? So, but I still think for us to do a better job here, we've got to find out some more things that this investor did not provide to me. Right? So if we say he wants a single family rental, right, how can we specify this a little bit more? Go ahead. Oh, okay, that's one, but go ahead.
A couple of things I would first figure out if he wants to rent or buy. It's $4 million in place.
He's got $4 million in place, and he wants to buy. He lives in San Francisco. He's going to purchase property down here in Southern California, but he's going to hold it.
Okay.
He just came into a bunch of money at end of year bonus, right? And he's going to invest it in the Southern California single family home market. That might not be where I would put the money, right? But this is the criteria he's given us so far. Okay, so she said, how many beds and baths? Okay, and this is something that he did provide for us. He wants at least 4 beds.
Lot size?
Okay, the lot size might matter. Okay. And, but let's break this down a little bit more specifically. Single family rental, right? Not quite. This is the keyword that we're looking for here. Does he want a renter in the home? Or does he want to buy it with a renter in place? Or does he want to buy it empty and put a renter in there? Right? That's what I first thought of when I was like, so I need to find something that's being rented already. And he said, no, but you need to be able to rent it fast. But this is kind of a lame criteria, isn't it? Like, how fast are we going to be able to rent this single family home? It totally depends on what? Not the price, right? Well, if I wanted to list my home for $500 a night, then I can get someone in there pretty quickly. Or not $500 a night, $500 a month, it'd be super fast, right? I have 100 Zillow leads in 2 minutes, right? So when clients give you criteria like this, right, decide like, okay, how diligent am I allowed to be with this person versus how annoying can I be? If I ask him 50 questions after he gives me this criteria, that's too many for argument's sake, right? If I don't ask him any questions, then what do I really risk here by not asking any follow-up questions and sending them 4 or 5 homes? What?
You don't really know, sorry, what they're really looking for.
Yeah, I don't really know.
It's like, yeah.
Right? It's like he says, yeah, I want you to pick a restaurant for me, right? And I say, oh, okay, cool. And I send him.
But you have to narrow it down because you don't really know. And
Okay.
there's too many to send.
You got to narrow it down, but so for argument's sake, what's your name?
Nikki,
Nikki?
Yeah.
How many questions do you think we agree 50 is too many?
yeah. we're
Right?
sending.
Okay. One's not enough. How many follow-up questions are we going to ask this person
I would
before?
say like 5 to 7.
Okay, maybe 5 to 7. So let's iron those out a little bit, right?
Like location, what matters to you, like, you know, if they have kids, they need to be back to school, for work purposes, if they need to be near their work area.
Okay, so it's not for him, it's for renters,
Oh,
right? So I'm gonna say location.
I would ask about law, is it gonna be cash purchase only 4 million budget, or he may be thinking to have like extra money?
Well, he's got 4 million in cash that he needs to place, and he wants 2 or 3 properties, right? So we could close cash, depends, right?
Yeah,
okay, so we're gonna, so I'm gonna say the second question might be financing,
yeah, pre-approval.
okay? And then this one. What is a good high school area? What does that mean?
Great schools,
What's a great school?
so it's like.
A great school compared to what? Right? So then I said, like, what are you really talking about here? And he goes, oh, a really good public school. So you know what I said? No offense to anyone who grew up here, everything outside of LA City. We're gonna exclude all of that. You want somewhere where you can go to a good public high school? The LA City is not where people purchase. It's not where families go to rent if they're looking at quality public high school. It's just not. Okay, so location is gonna play a big role here, right? Financing is a good question, right? If he wants to buy 2 or 3, okay, are we gonna buy 3 $1.33 million properties, all cash? Are we gonna place 4 million into our $6 million family portfolio and just get a little bit of leverage? How do we know? How are we gonna find out, right? Rent fast. What does that mean, right? How much we offer to rent it for is gonna be the main determining factor for how fast someone rents there, right? But what I said is, how soon are we trying to do this? What's the right time of year to purchase a property in a good high school area, right? Or public school, when families are gonna be exploring these different options that they have. August, what'd you say?
Summer.
Late autumn, yeah, so like, I would say
Everybody
summer.
already on places.
Yeah, so I would say like, okay, we've got until maybe July or August. Okay, we know that there's gonna be 2 or 3 properties. Okay, but my first question for our investor is, okay, it's gonna rent fast, we're gonna rent it out at market, it's gonna be a desirable area, right? But what about our rent to purchase price ratio? Right, we got a multifamily guy standing in the hallway, right? They always talk about this one measure called a GRM. Right? What's GRM stand for?
Gross rent multiplier.
Gross rent multiplier. It's just it's a number in between how much gross rent you're gonna get over the course of a year. You multiply that by your GRM, your gross rent multiplier, and that gives you the purchase price. So here's an example, right? If you've got $1 million home leasing for $5,000 a month, do we think that's a good investment? Is that a pretty good number? Maybe we're not sure. Maybe you guys aren't in the market every single day. Maybe you're not dealing with that stuff. I'm gonna tell you that $5,000 gross on a single family rental for $1 million is a really good number, right? If we've got a $3 million property, then by comparison, it's gonna get 10,000 gross per month. Is that a better ratio for us? Why not?
5,000 to 1 million is better than 10,000.
It's how much better?
Twice.
Not quite. 50%, right? Because if we're gonna spend $1 million and get $5,000 gross, right? Or we're gonna spend $3 million and only get 10, the purchase price went up 3x, right? And our rental gross amount only went up 2 times, right? So when you get loose criteria like this, like, was it Nikki?
Yes,
Like Nikki said, you don't know. You're gonna make the wrong, you don't know enough. I'm gonna send this investor 5 or 6 properties. I'm gonna say, wow, yeah, I've got a new construction listing coming out at $3 million. If it's gonna get 10,000, that's a pretty good number. That's a 10,000 a month is a good number, but it's not a good ratio. That's not a real good rental figure or amount for how much the purchase price is. Right?
right.
Okay, so we got the location, are we financing or not, right? What does this rent to purchase price ratio, right? We're gonna say the high school areas, how good of a school? Like blue ribbon, award winning, what?
Private schools,
Yeah, is it a private school not, or are we talking about public schools? This guy said, I just want a public school. So right away, I'm starting to funnel this, right? Like Nikki said, we don't know enough, right? So the investor's starting up here with this big pool of property. Right, here's our investor criteria. What we're trying to do is shade this into something so that when we actually supply our investor with, hey, let's take a look at a couple of these opportunities, that he thinks like, oh, this is kind of, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about, because I don't know this person yet, right? And just had a quick call, found out that he's looking for these things. He gives me some vague criteria like, I want it to rent fast, I want a good area, single family rental. Okay, oh, single family rental, so any home, right? That's not very helpful, right? High school, a good high school area. Okay, well, private school, public school, what are we talking about? I said public school, right? And $4 million a place, are we financing or not? That's also gonna be determined by our location. If you get 2 properties in Santa Monica, where there's pretty good public high school, right? We're gonna run out of money here pretty fast, aren't we? And we might find land in Santa Monica for $1.7 million or $1.8 million, right? So we could buy 2 dirt lots for 3.6. Does that work for our guy? No, okay. He also said single family rental. So if it's gonna need a bunch of work, does that work for us? Are we Are we gonna be adding and renovating and stuff like that if he wants it to rent fast? When he says rent fast, what's he telling me?
Like the way it comes out of this.
Time is of the essence.
Time is of the essence, but let's get like a little deeper into that, right? You're gonna have a chance in a second, right? So what I want you to think about with this scenario, or with every scenario, anytime you interact with a buyer or seller, they're gonna say something, but what they're getting at, right, the subtext of the conversation is what really, really good agents can understand really well. So when you say, oh, that person's a really good negotiator, what that ultimately means, and more times than not, it means that they're a very good listener, right? And that person listened to or understood what we're getting across, right? So this guy says, I need it to rent fast. What I'm gonna hear is that, what?
You're trying to like get rid of the property quick, right?
Yep, we're trying to move it fast, not necessarily that it's turnkey, not just that it's moving fast, but what I'm hearing from this guy is that he's concerned about cash flow. I don't think he's concerned about his ability to pay the mortgage. Right? Why not? Do I think he's worried about being able to afford it every month? If he just calls me, doesn't know me, he's willing to give me $4 million to start a single family portfolio. He lives in San Francisco, right? He's probably not worried about, can I make these payments every single month? If we're looking at stuff that's at least $1.3 million. What's your question?
What complicated on cash flows and ROI?
We're gonna get there, yeah. Well, that's gonna kind of be determined by this.
Okay.
Our rent compared to our purchase price will be our return on investment.
So, I mean, I would have a lot of questions for the rent pass.
Okay. Wait, you got a lot of questions for what?
Well, with the rent pass, I would dive deeper into that. I mean, because, he's trying to rent it fast, you want it furnished, you want it unfurnished.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
What's gonna rent faster?
It depends on the area,
And it depends on
the property, it depends on a lot of stuff.
the price too, right?
Actually.
Okay, so what I'm trying to sort out with this person, all these questions that we've got, right? If you're a below average agent, you will say, oh, okay, cool, right? Let me send you a few properties and you're just gonna send them some stuff in some places that you've kind of heard have good schools. Right? Like, you're not really gonna get, and you're gonna think like, oh, well, if it's a good school, it's a nice area, it'll rent quickly, right? And I'm gonna send them some properties and we're good. But like Nikki says, we gotta know a little bit more, maybe 5 to 7 questions, I think is a good measure. Like, you can ask one follow-up question for every piece of information that someone gives you, right? An example of this would be if I tell you that I've got, 2 kids. If I offer up that information, you could say, oh, how old are they? Without being annoying, right? If I said, oh, how old are they? And you say, or if you asked, how old are they? And I said, they're 5 and 8. I don't have any kids, but if I said they're 5 years old and 8 years old, and said, oh, do they like to play sports? Well, yeah, they play basketball and soccer. And you go, oh, where do they play soccer? Now I'm like, our conversation's a little too far away from what we're looking to cover today, right? And now you're like, me neither, Siri. Okay, so I'd say one follow-up question for each piece of information that they're willing to give you is a good rule of thumb, right? So, single-family rentals, how big, what do we, right? What kind of data do we think we're gonna sort out here if we know that this is an investor? Are we looking for 2-bedroom homes? Do those get really good rents?
Probably not.
Probably at least 3. In the front of my mind, I'm gonna think like, okay, what kind of a tenant is this person going to want? Like, if we get a 2-bed, 2-bath in Santa Monica, who's gonna buy that house? Probably a developer or a flipper or something. Someone's gonna overpay for a big lot and for the beds and baths. I don't know how to do this. Serena,
Josh.
press start, stop.
Josh.
Hold on, Josh knows?
Josh, right here. First person.
You know the button to push? So what we'll find, I believe, in our analysis is that the extra amount of money that an investor is going to pay for a 4-bed is going to command a lot more rent in comparison to a 3-bedroom. Why might that be the case? So the extra amount of purchase price that you're going to pay for the 4th bedroom
Well, common request from tenants.
is that worth it? Do we want the 3-bed for $1.5 million, or do we want the 4-bed for $1.75 million?
If it was my money or my client that I'm representing.
If it's your client's money. Depends on what they want, right? So what this investor is gonna say though, I know this is a passive investor, up in San Francisco. I know that the extra money you pay for that 4th bedroom is always worth it from a rental standpoint in comparison to a 3rd bedroom. The reason for this is because most families that are going to be really concerned with a good high school area, right, in the neighborhoods that this investor is going to want to be in, have at least 2 kids. And if you've got 2 kids and a primary bedroom, then you need an office or a guest for that 4th bedroom, right? So if you guys are looking at single family rentals and you put your client into a 3-bed, bad idea. If they can't afford the 4-bedroom in the area that they want to go to, that means they should be in a different area. You guys follow that? Okay, and we'll look at some examples. We'll get into it here in a second. Okay. So we've asked her a couple questions: location, public school. Okay, now we're trying to like pick our areas and choose things. Financing, right? Are we gonna go all cash on 3? Are we gonna buy 2 $2 million properties? And I want to know a little bit more about like this rent fast thing. What does fast mean when it comes out of your mouth? Fast to me means like inside of 30 days. I think the property's on the market for 2 weeks. You get a couple applications. Someone puts a deposit down to hold it. Rent commences 2 weeks after that. I think that's fast. I'll show you an example of like what's fast. How good of a school is an important consideration for us, right? And this financing is like, yeah, is he going all cash? This is going to determine a lot of our location. So let's make the assumption that this person is all cash. He just wants to buy these in cash. Why would you want to just pay cash for a single family rental? Anyone?
I guess you could make money during that, add your mortgage, achieve property taxes and other taxes, that could be the money that you make.
Sure could.
But you have, I mean, it depends on the situation.
Okay, so you're working through this in your head and out loud, right? Okay, but what if we put it into a property with the property taxes are so high that his rent's not gonna come? I'm gonna tell you that at these price points, he's paying cash, that's not gonna be a case. Right, because you put down $1.5 million, how much is he gonna pay in property taxes?
Probably like I mean, it depends, like probably like 8,000.
Well, let's say it's in LA County, what's he gonna pay about? What are about property taxes in LA County? About,
Like 5,000. About.
no, it's a percentage.
Oh,
No, no,
3,
no,
I don't know.
2.5.
okay. It's about 1.25%.
Yeah.
Percent. Okay. 1.25%, okay, is about what you're gonna pay in property taxes, right? So he's getting there though. See how he's like, I got so many questions, right? When you first are introduced to this person, I'm gonna say 5 to 7, right? Questions, and let's have them be follow-up questions, just so we know we're not infringing upon their time, right? Or their personal information. So we know it's gonna run fast, we price it right, fine. Okay, what kind of rent purchase price ratio are we looking for? How good of a school, right, do we want to be in, right? And then people have brought up turnkey or anything like this. Are you willing to do any work at all? Maybe not, right? But what's the subcontext that this person is giving us? The subcontext that I hear when he says I need it to rent fast is that he's concerned about cash flow. He's not concerned about whether or not it's gonna pencil as an investment for him, right? Because he's definitely gonna be able to rent it out for enough to cover his property taxes, right, at 1.25%, plus insurance, right, plus the maintenance or management for a single family rental, right? What's the single family rental cost you just to own before you start to get your rent? The property taxes, we said, 1.25%, right? Your insurance is what? Maybe 3,500 a year, 2,500 a year, something like that. Let's call it $3,000. Right? And then what about management and maintenance for the home? That's why we need to know, are you willing to do any work at all? We're gonna go buy something and he's gonna close day one, and then he's gonna have to pay his property taxes in November, and in December, he's gonna need to put a new air conditioner on it. That's gonna really start to chew into his cash flow, right? Well, we're gonna look at an actual example that like I just did, and I'm gonna see if maybe this guy will buy it from my clients that just closed on their single family rental. But for this, it's gonna rent fast in certain times of the year, right? Rent to purchase price ratio, how good of a school, any work at all. And then I'm gonna say, how soon are you trying to do this? This is actually more important than anything else from a customer service standpoint. Because now I know, where am I gonna spend my time? I could spend 3 hours tonight looking at rents in Calabasas and San Marino and Palos Verdes and Hermosa Beach and Manhattan Beach and all these places that I associate with having really good public schools outside of LAC. Right? I could think about all these places, right? But how far am I going to go into the weeds in Hermosa Beach on the MLS? How far am I going to go into the weeds in the MLS on San Marino or South Pasadena? I don't know, right? But this last question, how soon are you trying to do this, is going to drive my decision-making process for how I'm willing to allocate my time more than anything else, right? So he says, ASAP, I want to close by the end of the year. How am I going to spend my next 4 hours? Do I spend 2 hours looking at properties and send them 3 or 4? Do I send them 15 properties right away and then try to schedule a call with them? How do I know how I'm supposed to use this time? And he's about to tell me, well, it depends on what he says, right? I need to know more information. Okay.
I will try to send you options and organize some showing or meeting with him, because this is the time to ask all these other questions.
This is the time to ask all the questions so that I don't waste my time. What if he says, I don't waste my time and his time, right? What if he just gives me this? I just want to be next to the top high schools and not good public school areas. Right? I might make the assumption that, okay, well, he needs to be, we're looking in the valley then, and because Harvard Westlake's the best high school I could think of from an academic standpoint. You know, like that's probably from like a ranking space, maybe the highest one. You got some boarding schools up in like Santa Barbara and Ojai. Thatcher's one, Kate's another, that I think are like above half the people probably go to an Ivy League school. So if he says the top notch, regardless of anything, do I still think Ojai is a good place to go? No, right? The reason that we're not going to look at Ojai, although I automatically think, I think Thatcher is the best school that I could think of outside of Harvard Westlake, right? Is because of this. We don't have, there's no density issue there. When you have really, really high rents, it's because you're in a dense neighborhood, right? That means there's a lot of demand for these rentals, right? So if we have a lot of demand and it's in a good school, right? Where do we think we're gonna rank Calabasas, South Pasadena, and Hermosa Beach.
So the area with the great high school area or just
With the highest what?
high school area?
Yeah, so these are all three really good high school areas that immediately came to my mind. Manhattan Beach also has very good high school areas, but I know you can attend Manhattan Beach public schools when you live in Hermosa.
You're gonna take Calabasas and not home.
Yes, you can, right? And, but I don't see the density in Calabasas that I see in Hermosa Beach, right? So here's how these three stack up for me, right? I know in South Pasadena that this is primarily a family area. Hermosa Beach is extremely dense, right? There's like, it's packed in there. If you guys haven't been to Hermosa Beach, it's like these little townhomes and tight. There's some big homes, some big lots and stuff like that. But a big gigantic luxury home has a really, really low rent to purchase price ratio. Right? But we've already determined that we want to get to this 4-bedroom number because that's the best value. Right? So Hermosa Beach has the density, South Pasadena has a family neighborhood, right? Calabasas is more affordable than both of these neighborhoods, and by a pretty good margin. There's lots of families in Calabasas. It's a desirable area, right? So what we're trying to sort out for this investor and sort out for ourselves is how tightly can we funnel this down? And then how are we going to evaluate what's more important for this person, right? If we buy a home that needs a tiny little bit of work, or we buy a home in an area that is topped out, right? Like, do we feel like there's a lot of equity growth and development here, or are we going for like cash flow play, right? If we bought a $2 million home out in Westlake, we're going to get better cash flow on our purchase price dollar, right? Than if we bought in Santa Monica or even in Hermosa Beach or South Pasadena. And we're going to get better cash flow as we leave density dollar for dollar, right? But the assumption that we're making is that the equity and the value of the real estate in the more dense areas, right, is going to grow faster in those neighborhoods. What I mean is $1 million in Westlake is going to get me $4,800, give or take, a month. $1 million can't even do that in Santa Monica, right? $2 million in Santa Monica is not going to get me $9,600 a month. It's not. So not as good of a ratio, but hopefully the $2 million in Santa Monica is going to grow to 2.1, 2.2 at a faster clip than our $1 million is going to go to $1,050,000, $1,100,000, $1,150,000. You follow? So in all real estate, there's this inverse relationship between the value, projected value of the dirt and the equity in the home and the cash flow that an investor can get. Okay, we'll talk about that more. But for this, right, and for today, where are we going to start with this guy? What do we do with this lead? Where are we going to spend our time and efforts trying to figure out what we're going to send this person? I'm going to send you an example of the transaction I just did for some clients that were in an exchange.
We can check the planning areas. I was thinking that Santa Monica is already on high level and no equity.
What she said was Santa Monica is already high. There's not a lot of equity development, stuff like that. I actually would agree with you. If I were a long-term single-family holder, I would not go to Santa Monica. The other reason is that Santa Monica has incredibly strict rent control, and I feel like it's gonna come to single family sometime over the holding period of this investment.
This is not for this guy as well, because strict rent control, it means interest on the tenant side, not on the landlord side.
That's true.
So I wouldn't recommend Santa Monica at all. Silver Lake more interesting.
Silver Lake is more interesting, but do they have really good public schools, high schools? No, no, they don't, right? So what I'm getting at, what we're really gonna focus on for this week, right? And where I wrapped up the last thing of Ignite is you guys are trying to develop stories when you first start your career. And you need to be able to tell potential buyers and sellers or friends of buyers and sellers, you need them to feel comfortable with you. And the only way to make them feel comfortable is if you sound like you know what you're talking about. And not just like you kind of know, you need to sound like you really, really, really know what you're talking about, right? So at every interaction, whenever you're doing research like we're about to do, or you look at a specific property, make it your business, because it literally is your business, to develop at least one really good story about it. Find out one really good thing. If you're working with a mentor, try and get stories from the deals that they're working on. If you're part of a team, try and get stories from the deals that they're working on, right? At every interaction, every time something happens near you, make it your business to become an expert in it, right? So I'm gonna tell this investor my story about 3165 Sierra Drive. I'm gonna tell it to you guys really quickly. So this is me when I was at Compass pretty recently, right? The listing agents were these, three great women from Engel Volkers. Here's the story of this property. They went out at $1.1 million, right? $1.1 million. Took us a while to negotiate this offer. My clients were in exchange, so they had some capital that they had to place in a short period of time. And they said, where do you think that we should buy, right? Where we might be able to go live in it someday, but also the equity is going to grow. They had about $400,000 to put down from their exchange. So with interest rates in the 6.5s, right? We couldn't get leverage up to like $2 million, right? With 400 grand down, right? Like we could have, that's a 20%, but they would have been paying out a lot every single month. But I'm going to, next time I get this investor on the phone, tell them this story. So we ended up with this house. They've done some upgrades, some not. We've got these really old window curtains in here, awesome. It's got this old carpet, kind of got a funky kitchen layout, but we have a decent sized backyard, decent sized patio, sort of upgraded master bath, right? It looks okay. We got this other room, some kind of funky paneling on it. They didn't even show us the fourth bedroom because it's horrific, right? But when we were underwriting this home and looking at this, we really like the neighborhood it's in. It's in a planned community in Westlake Village. It's right next to a small elementary school. And we realized that we think from this home, we can find a renter for like $4,500. $4,500 gross would be a pretty good number, right? On 1.1. We ended up closing at $1,060,000, but we did some things that were really, really weird, right? First, we wanted to use all the client's exchange capital, but we didn't want them to have to come out of pocket for anything, right? So we had to get a loan that's going to cover all of their closing costs and down payment and everything for them to purchase the home. But if you buy an empty home like this one that needs a little bit of work, why is this a problem for my new investor right here? It's not going to rent fast, right? So what could we do in this home so that my clients don't put their money down and then have to now pay a new mortgage for 30 days or 60 days while it goes out to market?
Sale is back.
Sale leaseback is one option, right? But what's that gonna achieve? I mean, we're gonna close, we're gonna close, and then what?
They start paying rent like right away, and then during this time, you can order all these appliances and everything you want to change
So that's
and permits.
a great solution. It's not the best solution,
I'm learning.
okay? That's a great one. So what she said was, do a sale leaseback. Which means the seller gets their money, right? And the second that we close, the seller's gonna start paying rent for some agreed upon period of time to the buyer. Right? But then what happens? We can't work in there while they're renting it, right? What we want is we want it leased, and we want the work done as fast as we can. So how could we do the work before we close? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible, right? And so what would we need to do?
Well, it comes to sacrifices. You couldn't take some of your own commission if you're at the lead agent.
Oh.
Elite agents don't give up.
I know,
commission.
but I'm just, you said like you
I know. Yeah.
50K on the open house.
Yeah. I said you could.
You could.
Yes. So what I tried to do was to say, hey, listen, seller, we're gonna close, but we want to close in 75 days from escrow. We want to go through escrow, everything the same, but instead of doing a lease back, right, where we still can't work, I want you to let us do the work in escrow. What do we think the seller said?
Depends on market. Nowadays, probably yes.
Seller said, kick rocks. You're not gonna do anything on my home, right? Because what would that look like? We put our 3% deposit in, and then
Doing less.
we go in and we start doing work and our loan doesn't go through. Now what? Yeah, we're gonna get sued, you guessed, is right, right? So I tried to think, what's the best way that we can do this? The other thing is, if we close and get the loan, right? Then now my clients need to spend money for the renovations, right? Because like the lender doesn't want us to do work while we're in escrow. Right? The seller already said they don't want us to do work while we're in escrow. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. So here's what happened. We got an extension to escrow, 30 days, so that we could order our materials, right? But in escrow, we got the seller to release part of our deposit to a contractor. The reason that we did that was so that my clients would not have to actually pay money. So if you have a client in an exchange, I don't want their 400 grand to go to buy the house, right? I want 370 grand to go to buying the house, and I want 30 grand to go to the contractor, or else my clients would have to pay for this out of pocket, right? But we can't tell the lender that, because if the lender knows you're doing work before you close, that's a problem, because they might get sued. So what we ended up doing was increasing our deposit amount into escrow when we went non-contingent. We immediately released it to the seller, and the seller hired the contractor so that right when it was closed, we had the materials there and the contractor could start working. So a little weird, it's kind of crazy, it's tough to explain to the listing agents what we were trying to do, but my clients did not want to use their own money to make these improvements.
You're saying seller, so increase the amount of money deposit
Mhm.
from,
From 3% up to $100,000 we did,
okay,
because that made them comfortable enough that we were gonna close.
okay.
So then the seller took that $100,000 and paid the contractor of our choice so that we could start that work the second that we closed.
But it's also questionable, right?
It's very questionable, but that's why we had to increase it to $100,000, so that seller felt comfortable knowing that like, hey, look, even if we don't close, we paid you $100,000. And out of that $100,000, we're putting new floors, new paint, recessed lighting into your home at closing still. So difficult question, but
So they're motivated because even if it doesn't close, they get the upgrades.
they get that, they get the money,
The money from this deposit.
the money from the deposit. Because we're gonna give it to them anyways at closing. right? So it's tough, like, man, $100,000, like John told me he released $100,000 to a seller. Terrible advice. Never ever do that. Unless, for some reason, it's gonna save your clients a tremendous amount of money and time. And you're sure that you're gonna close anyways.
But what if your client won't be able to get a loan? And to pay 100 because you're told him to do that.
So what did we do? We got an extension to escrow, right? Which served two purposes. One, it allowed us to get clear to close our loan in time. So we knew the loan was gonna fund. And then two, it gave us some time to order the materials. Or rather for the contractor to order the materials.
We extend from 1 month to 3 months, right?
To 75 days.
Also.
So we pushed it back another 45 days. They said, well, why are we gonna let you extend escrow by 45 days? This is crap. Well, you're not living in there, it's empty, it's her mom's home, right? And we're gonna give you all this extra money, like you said, to upgrade the home. In the event that we don't close for some reason, you got all this cash, you can upgrade it, take it back out to market.
And we're getting loans at the end of the escrow, to include the money, right?
Yep.
And at this point, we're having ready to go house, rent it out.
So here's how this all played out, right? My point in bringing up this story, right, is that when you're working with someone, right, or when you're going to open houses, or when you're looking at everything, go way into the details, right? It's supposed to be about like embracing your job. If you get obsessed with every one of these opportunities, right, and every time you talk to a buyer, seller, a homeowner or something, and you're like feverishly like obsessed about it, so but without getting annoying, right, then you're gonna have a good story and good experience that you can share with another potential prospect. This guy, when he got me on the phone real fast, is like, is this the right person for me or not? Right? Like, yeah, it was referred to me, and like there's a good chance that like I have this business anyways. But right away, he's trying to sort out, well, am I gonna be comfortable with this person? Right? So I told him this story about the Westlake home in Sierra. I know Westlake has really good public schools. There's $1,050,000, right? Here's how fast we were able to rent this home. So we get this house, we close. Our contractor's in there in 3 business days. All the materials had already been delivered. So all the paint's there, all the floors, the electrician is already scheduled. They turned this home in 10 days. So we closed. 10 days later, we finished the construction, right? 5 days into construction, I took the clients around and we looked at all these other leases. Because we're trying to decide how much we're gonna list this home for lease. So here we are in Westlake Village, this nice little community where we bought the home. So for our comp set, right, this is a really unique little neighborhood, right? It's literally surrounds this big open area that's half park and half elementary school. You've got unobstructed, so it's kind of hard to tell, but you guys can see this little like line right here. Can you see that? See how the street just stops? At every street, there's a pathway that goes down to the school and down to the park that's unobstructed by another street. So there's no traffic. So anywhere in there, you can walk right down to the park in a stroller with the kids, whatever, they don't have to cross any streets at all. Families love it, right? Super hot. So we're going around and we're trying to decide how much are we gonna lease this for? We've got a 4-bed, 2-bath, it's 1,800 square feet. So we're looking at our comps and we poke around, we go, oh, it's a 4.3, 2,400. I don't know that we can really use that, right? At least out for 5,000. So we're probably not gonna get 5. We got a 4.2 that's 1,800 square feet, right? So we're talking to the clients, we're trying to manage expectations here. We go to look at this one. It's a 3.2 at 1,700 square feet. At the time, it wasn't leased, it was on market. Let's take a look at what happened here. So we saw it on market when it was 4,400 bucks. And we thought, oh man, this is bad. Like, we're gonna have a hard time covering the mortgage. This has been sitting out on the market for 4,400. It's probably gonna lease for 41 or 42. This is not looking good. So I take the client to this lease listing, not for them to buy it, just for us to get a little bit more information, get a little bit better perspective for the client. And because we want to see what's going on. So they got new floors, kind of similar to ours, but it's a little bit smaller. It's got kind of a funny layout. And then right here on the counter, I see 3 business cards. If you're a realtor, it's good practice that when you walk through somewhere, you go through an open house, you're looking at a potential property for a client or for a tenant, that you leave your business card. And then they get your contact information, they can follow up with you, whatever. But what I did was take a picture of all 3 of those business cards. And why would I do that? Why is it important to me to take a picture of the business cards?
Potential clients, the purchase you're gonna doing in a few.
All 3 of these agents walk their client through this home in that neighborhood, right? But it's still available. So none of those agents lease that house, right? But I know they've got a client looking in that neighborhood, right? So then what we did was call all 3 of those agents. And one of them said, yes, we're still looking. My client's in a tight timeline. She sold her home. We're really looking for something in this area. I said, well, we're gonna go to market in 10 days. If you wanna see it now and you're ready to sign a lease before the 1st of the month, I can get you in there tomorrow. Client walked right in. She said, this is exactly what I want. I said, $48.50 is it, or we're going to market? Cut a check, made a deposit that day. So it was 13 days from close to the time that we collected a deposit for the lease. So it ended up being like 19 days from the day that we took title to the property to the day that we had a tenant in there, which is like an insanely short period of time. That's crazy fast, right? If it were a turnkey property, maybe, right, a really good agent would have said, hey, look, we're gonna do a lease back, but throughout the term of your lease back, you have to be willing to show it, right, to our clients. And we're gonna negotiate those terms, right, to potential renters, right? So maybe we're gonna try that with this guy. So if I say, hey, you're concerned about it renting quickly, here are a few options. We could do a lease back on the close, which is very common right now, right? And put it on market for lease to keep that window tight. Or, you know, if we're purchasing an empty home, right, we might be able to do the same thing to market it for lease, but it's gonna take, you know, some work. We gotta work with the listing agents and with the sellers to make that happen. What are you most interested in? You said, well, I just want it leased fast. But now I've like got a little bit of street cred with this potential client, right? And it's only because I've got a really good story to tell. When someone says, tell me about the last property that you worked on, or the last time you sold a house, or the last time you helped someone buy a home. And if you don't have a big list of stories because you don't have a big book of business, it's a terrible excuse. Because you should be developing and building little stories with relationships that you have in the office, with open houses that you go to, with anyone else that you're talking with in the real estate community. So with this investor, how many stories can you develop in a short period of time to make them feel comfortable working with you? You've got to secure this business as fast as you can. So if you go with a mentor to a listing, or if you sit in here at the commercial meeting, or you talk to an agent in the office and you get coffee with them, and you want to hear stories, because these clients aren't necessarily going to know, unless you give up this information, that these aren't your stories. And that's what you have to develop as fast as you can. Because the more stories I have for this person, and off the top of my head, I said I've got the Westlake story. I've got a buyer that I know purchased in Palos Verdes we spent a long time looking in South Pasadena. So now I know South Pasadena really well. So when I talk to this guy, I'm like, well, these are the areas that I would recommend them start in, right? I've got South Pasadena stories. I grew up in Agoura Hills, so I got Calabasas stories, right? And I've got Hermosa Beach stories because I also manage a rental in Hermosa Beach. So these are the 3 places that I'm gonna go to. These are the stories in my back pockets that I'm ready to use with this potential investor. So when we go through this, right, or when you're looking at your farm, or you're going to open houses, you're hosting open houses, make sure you're developing really, really good stories for this potential client. But let's get into the MLS and look real fast at something that we think might work. All of these properties are potential properties for my single family client, right? For my single family buyer. Why? They're all single family homes that got leased. Right? So if his main concern is, the cash flow, that he's gonna park all this money and he's not going to be able to do it, I can tell him like, well,
High demand.
yeah, we could start with the properties off market that have renters in them. Pretty low probability chance that these sellers who just put a tenant in there are gonna want to sell it to you, right? Like they just leased it. But maybe that tenant that they just leased it to is already a pain in their butt. And they've decided that they're ready to move on. You don't know. But we've got an option to lease these spaces to him with tenants in there. He says he wants 4 beds. I agree that is probably like the best metric. I think you go up to 7 bedrooms, not worth it. I'd rather have 2 4-bedroom homes as a single family rental. And we're buying more land, getting more units in more areas. Like the upside for that, I think, is greater as a long-term hold. The downside between getting a bunch of little rentals is what? A lot more management for all these separate little properties. So if I encourage him into getting 1 property instead of 3, it's gonna be easier for me to deal with. It's gonna be a lot easier for me to manage, right? But he's not gonna have the same kind of upside, I believe, from an investment perspective. So this guy says he wants this stuff. You can do this same process, right? And develop the same stories if you're working with any old buyer or any old seller. So if you show up to a listing appointment, or you're having a conversation with someone, you guys should be in a race to develop these stories as fast as you can. Because someday you're going to come across someone who's going to say, tell me what you think about Beverlywood. And if you go, oh, Beverlywood's nice, the homes are great. It's pretty below average story, But you only need like maybe 1 or 2 really elite, really great stories about Beverlywood for that person to think you know what you're doing, which is all you're really trying to do. You're just trying to level yourself up above this person just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I would like to hear one more time your opinion about potential risk client. For example, in my mind, if he doesn't want to put any work at all, so it means the cap rate, the valuable of this house rent won't be so interesting because it's like pretty conservative. Someone already did everything before
there's not gonna be a lot of value added potential, you're right, and it will be a lower cap rate, right? Because someone's paying for something that's totally turnkey and pretty and beautiful, right? Like, they're gonna pay a higher price per square foot for something that is done, or recently renovated, or worse, new construction, right?
Yes, but at the same time, we cannot sell to him like cheap property because he doesn't work.
He doesn't live down here, right? And remember, this is kickstarting his single family rental portfolio. So like, we can't put him into something that's not, that's not gonna work out, right? It's also my first relationship with this person, right? I got a first impression to make with this client.
So what you would recommend to buy 2 or 3 properties ready to go or some work on all this lease back and everything?
We've got to ask him a few more questions. I'm gonna suggest that he get 2 properties.
So bigger, better. but
I
more
think two
conservative.
$2 million properties.
In a more
right.
potential area, upcoming areas, so.
Can we spend $2 million in Hermosa Beach and get a nice little rental? Yeah, right, but like, what's the missing pieces, besides how soon is this, is like, what is his long-term goal? If you give me $2 million and you want me to, is it your expectation that I turn it into $4 million? And I've got to go find a diamond in the rough, it's gonna take me a while, right? I gotta like be able to figure some things out. I gotta know that he's gonna be willing to do a little bit of work, right? If he's not gonna get financing, we said we're making this assumption that he's all cash, and he is. He just got this lump sum of money, he's like, don't want more debt. Want my ultimate downside to just be property taxes, right? Which for him would just be, in the event that he bought 2 empty $2 million homes, we never leased them out, they'll write off for him anyways.
At this point, 2 properties, and let's say in Calabasas, because it's more affordable, still upcoming area of celebrities, high school areas, so it's like. I shouldn't push him to buy. 3
You should
properties.
never push your clients to do anything.
I mean, they're listening. And
Here's the only time that you should be pushing your clients to do something is when you're in escrow, right? Or you're right before escrow. That's the only time, right? The time when I'm like, we have to do this, you have to do this, listen to me.
it's a wrong word, but.
Yeah,
it's a recommendation.
Yeah, recommendations, I think, are all good, right? And as long as you have something to back up your recommendation, then I think you're gonna be fine. Let's take a look at a couple properties, because we were gonna do this anyways, and she said, I want to hear it. So let's see what's on the market in Calabasas. Why do I like Calabasas? Why do I think Calabasas is a good
It's
spot?
a safe area, it's nice infrastructure, a lot of celebrities and people vibe it, even if they saying that they are don't.
But what button did he push up here? Start, stop? You know? Yeah, I know. Took a picture. Oh, but we're back. Okay. Sorry, everybody on Zoom. We're talking about Calabasas. Oh, we are screen sharing now. But I don't see that I'm screen sharing. There it is. All right, so I like Calabasas because it's just outside of LA City, but I think it's close enough that we're still running into a density problem. So all of these places, Van Nuys, Reseda, Winnetka, Tarzana, Encino, this is all still LA City. So Calabasas has become incredibly popular with celebrities and everything like that because there's good value out there. You can buy big homes, you have good privacy that you don't get down in the city, but it's also become increasingly popular for people who want really good public schools. So let's see what Calabasas is going to look like. We're gonna send a couple of these to our client. But what purchase price parameters are we gonna put on this search? Anybody? 2 million? Maybe we'll look at anything up to like 2.4. Just make sure we don't miss a killer opportunity. What else? We're gonna say like, it's probably gotta be at least $1 million. It's gonna be in Calabasas. See. Here we go. So we've got a few opportunities here. And we probably don't want like super big shiny. This looks like it could be a good one, a little 4-bed, 3-bath, 3,400 square feet. So we got a 4.3, 3,400 square feet, or 2.25. What do we think this is gonna rent for? I don't know, we're not agents in Calabasas, we don't know yet, right? We'll get there. Here's a $1.7 million property. It's a 4.3, 2,400 square feet. Let me say 1.7-ish. What do you think that one will rent for? We don't know yet.
15,000.
15,000?
Come on.
You're out of your mind. We're gonna find out. How about this one? 3.2. Does that work for us? Maybe we don't know yet. And our guy wants 4 beds, so let's chop this up a little bit more. At least 4. Here's one, 2.1. 4 bed. 4 bath. It's 3,200 square feet. And it's on the market for 2 million. What's that one gonna rent for? We don't know. Okay. But we've got 3 properties so far, right? We got a 4.3, 3,400, 2.25, 4.3 for 2,400 for $1.7 million. And then we got one that's kind of right in the middle there. A little bit closer to this one. We got a 4.4 for 3,200, 2 million. So like, where are we at on price per square foot here? This one's asking 225 divided by 3,400, 660 per square foot. We've got 1.7 divided by 2,400 is 708 per square foot. And then this last one is 2 million divided by 3,200, 625 square foot. Do we have enough to tell our client a story about Calabasas rentals yet? No. What else do what do we need?
Should we look up the rents?
Should we look up the rents? We should. What else? What else do we need? So we're looking for single family rentals. We kind of got an MLS, we're bouncing around.
I'll look up where the best houses are.
What public high school are we gonna go to in Calabasas? This one's an easy one. It's Calabasas High School. I want details on the high school. Because I'm gonna need to make my case for why we should be in Calabasas in the first place. Right? Maybe it turns out that the rents in Calabasas compared to the purchase price suck. Maybe it turns out that Calabasas High School isn't that good of a school. Am I gonna go way deeper, dive into Calabasas? Am I gonna look at 10 properties? Probably not. Probably gonna look at 2 or 3 properties for each one of these neighborhoods that I identified. I'm gonna send them to them and I'm gonna say, let's review them over a call. Because I think we're gonna find that there's some similarities or price per square foot basis in Calabasas, right? And some similarities on a price per square foot basis in Hermosa Beach, and some similarities on the price per square foot basis in South Pasadena. And then what's gonna determine where this guy buys? Does he want a little more cash flow? You want a little bit more land? Or does he want something a little bit more central to LA? Maybe the demographics of these neighborhoods are a little bit different. I'm gonna tell you that the household income for South Pasadena, a little bit less than Calabasas, which is still a little bit less than Hermosa Beach. Right? So like maybe that matters to him. How much better average household income is he willing to sacrifice for more cash flow today? If he does it all. See what I mean? So like if we say, yeah, you want to look at some rentals and I just send him 4 or 5 properties below average. Do I have the time to do an elite high level analysis for this person? If he's my only buyer, or maybe it's a slow market and this guy's ready to spend $4 million and says he's got to do it by the end of the year, I'm probably like drinking a Rockstar and like gonna crunch all night for this person. Because I'm probably looking at 2.5% on $4 million, 100 grand. Would you stay up all night for 100 grand? Yeah. How many nights in a row would you stay up for 100 grand? That's probably the better question.
So the end of the year.
Probably the end of the year. I'd probably say 30 grand a night, or for what could I stay up 5 straight days for 20,000 a night? I'd probably figure out how to do it. I would die, maybe, but that's what happens when you get into the real estate community, you get into a real estate career. You lose sight of what type of service you need to give to someone who says they're ready to buy something for $4 million. People lose the idea that like, maybe this guy, yeah, we got to figure out if he's a real buyer. We got to like check him out and see if this is a good opportunity or not. Is he serious? I probably want to see some proof of funds, or I'm probably gonna like look him up on LinkedIn, see like, does he actually have this kind of job with Facebook that he says he has? Can I find this person? Is this real? Before I decide to stay up all night. But once I get through these questions, I need to knock this guy's socks off. I can't just assume that he's going to use me because he was referred to me by someone else. I have one opportunity to impress this person, right? So if we get in here and we see that, hey, right, why do we think this home is listed at such a higher price per square foot and compared to the other one? Do I have an opinion about these 3 yet? Like, not quite. I'm probably going to spend 3 or 4 minutes clicking through these photos so that I can understand a little bit about this price per square foot. But if he asks me over the phone, well, what are homes in Calabasas selling for? I'm going to say, well, it depends on how big they are, but if you want a 4-bed, 3-bath, you're probably going to be looking at something like $650 a square foot. Now it sounds like I sell homes in Calabasas, but I don't. I just looked at these and did a little bit of math. I went one step past what we see here just by clicking on this photo. It doesn't say price per square foot right there. Right? I could click into this and find out some more information. But like she said, we need to see the rents. What do we think? Is this a hot rental? It's a little old, it's a little sleepy. You're gonna kind of like shuffle through here real quickly. This looks like it has flip potential, right? It's not a real sexy property. You got this kind of weird furniture in here. Ooh. How do we feel about turf for rental?
Easy to manage.
Easy to manage. Right? Is it worth putting the turf in? Or not? How much does it cost to put turf in? Any guesses? A wild guess. 10 to 15,000 for how big of a backyard. Materials for good turf with the blah, 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 and the insulation is probably like 10 or 11 bucks a square foot. So we got this backyard, we're gonna guess is maybe what, 15 feet by 30 feet? It's 450 square feet, right? Something like that. Does it look a little bit bigger than that? We're ballparking this thing. Maybe like 12 bucks a foot, 450 square feet. How much is that?
5,400.
5,500 bucks, right? Is this going to, are we gonna get it back in maintenance? Or if he sells it in a year, is it smart to put turf down? Nah, we don't know. Maybe. What if he's gonna hold it for 10 years? It's gonna save a lot of water. Do landlords pay for water? They do?
I'm sorry.
Tenants,
Tenants probably pay for it. But what do landlords typically pay for?
gardening.
Gardening. So do we need the gardener here to mow it and all that other stuff? So putting the turf down, I'm gonna save 60 bucks, 80 bucks a month. 80 bucks a month, 960 a year, you hold it for 10 years, saves 9,600 bucks. Maybe saves 10 grand putting the turf down over that time frame. So turf is $12 a square foot. Don't forget it. Purchase and installation. So when you're walking around with the buyer and they go, yeah, we don't like this backyard, the landscaping, you say, no worries, turf's 12 bucks a foot. Right, I've got the landscaping guy for you. Right, we can bid this all out in escrow. Don't let this deter you from the value of this home. Right? You're gonna hold it for 5 years, 10 years, you guys are gonna live in it, right? Turf might save you 10,000 bucks a year. Now you sound like you know what the hell you're talking about. See what I mean? So how long does it take to put the turf down? Go find out. How much does it cost to actually install it? How long does it take? Find out. Because you might come across one seller, one buyer, and be able to use this little tiny little nugget of information that's going to make them think that you're not brand new at this. That's what stories are about. That's what these deep dives are for. And I'm supposed to be talking about like sparking and launching your career and embracing your job. Like if you're obsessive about these properties and the properties and opportunities that you come across, then you're going to have the tools and stories in your back pocket that will make these potential clients of yours feel like they can trust you. And that's all you're trying to get to. You're just trying to get to a point where everyone thinks that they should ask you about real estate. That's where you're trying to go. So let's take a look. She said we need to see what the rents look like. Okay, you ever come across someone who says Calabasas? You can say, well, last year was about $650 a square foot for a 4-bed. Should I buy in Calabasas? There's a lot of inventory, a lot of stuff in homes in Calabasas, about 2,400, 2,600. You're gonna spend about $1.8 million. You're gonna need a little bit of work, but like roughly speaking. So if you're looking at homes in Santa Monica, $1.8 million, dirt, full flips, 2 2s, probably too much work for you guys for your first property. Have you ever considered, your lender said you're approved up to $1.9 million. Have you looked at building your family in Calabasas? You said you both work from home. Now they're like, oh, this is an expert in real estate. I didn't know that about Calabasas off the top of my head. What's your question?
Yeah, I'm what this is, but like Calabasas, and you mentioned South Pasadena. I don't know if you've been reading news, but it had quite a bit.
I read some news.
With mountain lions in those areas, like about a month ago, mountain lions stuff like in San Vicente.
I saw it. Yeah. near Whole Foods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and, wondering, is that something that needs to be disclosed?
does my investor care?
If somebody's buying, it might be.
And
But
if
it
he's
says
buying in a
in
mountain
that-
line area,
Huh?
you might bring it up if he's buying in Brentwood.
Yeah.
If he's buying in Calabasas, I'm more concerned if this investor, I'm more concerned about the cost of fire insurance.
What do you do have around that?
No, there's mountain lines in Calabasas for sure, but I'm thinking fire insurance,
Yeah.
because that's a direct hit to his bottom line.
Yeah, but
Fire
this
insurance.
gate could be directed to small kids. Kids too.
I think it's maybe more of a concern for the family than it is for the investor, because the investor doesn't carry any liability for the mountain line.
And then like one in last year, they smashed some guys. So maybe walking the dog last week.
If you had a listing on that street and that dog got eaten by a mountain lion and you know it, I would consider that to be material.
Okay.
But that there are mountain lions in Calabasas is not gonna need to be disclosed on or in the listing.
Okay.
So let's get into the rents real fast for Calabasas. Talking point for sure. Necessary to disclose? I'd argue not. So we see all these rents around, right? Do we think, without clicking on it, that any of these homes leased for 25K? Do we need to do that? Do we need to dive into this one? No. Why not? Because we already know, based on the amount of rent that we get here, this is not inside this guy's purchase price for $2 million. Right? We already know that if this person's collecting $300,000 a year in rent, that like they ain't buying it for $4 million. Right? That'd be a pretty good rate of return. Right? Because we saw Westlake House, 4,800 on $1 million, which you think is a good rental. Right? So $25,000 a month. Do we need to dive in here? Probably not. What kind of parameters are we going to cite with? Maybe let's just start with some of the ones that we thought made sense. Maybe we cut this off at 5. Right? We're at the top of our price range here for this on-market one, 2.25, 3,400. So I'm going to say, let's look at homes under 4,000 square feet. Starting to narrow this down a little bit better. Right? Here's a 4.4 for 3,200. This looks like a pretty good number for us, doesn't it? $8,000 on a 4-bed, 4-bath, 3,200. And so here's a 4.4 for 3,200. Can we really get 8,000 on 2 million? Okay, it's pretty good. That's a pretty good little deal, right? So what do we think, right? We're gonna look at this one side by side with the other list, with the on-market listing. Do we like this? Do we have cul-de-sac vibes? Is that what we're getting here? Nice big open family room. The floor is a little broken up. It's kind of weird. Sorta updated. Little wet bar. Nice little backyard. We probably want, oh, look at that. The swing set. Big old grass area. Is that important to families with kids? Right, turns out this is a 4-bed, 3-bath, 3,200 square feet. Ooh, we'd love to get 8K here. Right, we just got $79.99. And she said, that's pretty good. What's your name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Jennifer said, that's pretty good. Is it as good as our Westlake house though? $4,800 on $1,050,000, really.
Not quite.
What's this ratio need to look like here? Someone tell me, how much is this in a lease for $1.5 million on the same ratio? 25% less, right? Which is how much? So this same house, under this same ratio to 1,050,000, you see that fast math? 25%, 2 million gets us to 1,050,000, right? 25% of 8,000 gets us to 6. So do we like this house in Calabasas better as a single family rental than this house in Westlake? I think we do. I think we got good cash flow here, right? From a straight cash flow perspective. Right, but what are we gonna do with this lawn? Ugh, it's $100. We had turf in the other one. He wants it to lease fast. If I'm poking around and we see that this multiplier in this area is pretty similar to Calabasas and Westlake, right? I'm gonna send this property to my guy. And I'm gonna say, hey, for about $2 million, we can get a pretty good ratio here. We can get around 8,000 gross. But am I just gonna forward this to him? I'm gonna forward it with an opinion. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about Calabasas. You're gonna look at 1970s or 80s build. It's kind of a cookie cutter type home, right? Looks like we've got a big lot, we got a big gigantic backyard. And we'll see, like, what do we think about this actual neighborhood in Calabasas? Why do we like it? Proximity to the 101, right? It's easy to get downtown, right? You've got really good public schools here. Do we think it's gonna rent fast? How long did it take this particular client to lease it? 35 days. They went out at 8. They got 8. So they were patient, gave some commission. 3% is pretty good for a tenant rep. 2-month security deposit is pretty big ask. The most you're allowed to ask for a rental is 2 months worth in the state of California for a security deposit. Someone wants some crazy security deposit, can't do it. 2 months is most you're allowed to ask. So the highest amount of money that you can charge your client at move-in is first month plus up to 2 months security deposit. You got sellers or investors or clients that say like, hey, I want to get $40,000 security deposit because it's a big luxury home. Well, if that's the most important thing for you, we need to get $20,000 a month. Because legally the most you can do is 2 months. Just a little nugget for whenever you talk to someone about renting their home out. Right? They say, yeah, actually we inherited a home and John told me to give you a call. You said you're a realtor. So like, okay, cool. Well, here's how this process works. We're going to collect the security deposit. We're going to do everything. We can pay it all through Zillow. Are you going to be managing it yourself? You're going to manage it on your own. Just word for the wise. It's an older home, right? Or you're worried about someone messing up the house. The most you can charge for a security deposit is 2 months. They'll be like, oh, okay, cool. That makes sense. Right? It's a big price point, and they're asking for a lot of money. Maybe you try and talk the client into just allowing for 1 month security deposit. But you're going to be pickier and only go with clients that have really high credit scores. Those people are less likely to mess up your place. So we got a little bit of an opinion on Calabasas. Is this good enough? Are we going to go look at other areas? Are we going to track down more homes? We found a pretty good rental. I think we're going to look at one more rental in Calabasas. We're going to send them a few of the properties that are on market. So look at all these, 8,500, 8,500, 65, there's one for 8, 83. Like, I'm gonna guess that this one right here, without clicking on it, is something like a 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,700 square feet, and it's getting, no, it's probably not 27 because we're getting 32 here, right? So I'm gonna guess it's 3,400 square feet. It's just a little more updated than this last one that we saw. What do we think? Yeah. Ooh, is it a little bit more updated? 3,400 square feet, so it's a little bit, I got the square footage right. Still looks like it's in a nice community. We're gonna have the big backyard. Is it gonna be a little bit more updated than another home? A little more of an open floor plan. We don't really get to see. We don't get to see if it has a big backyard or not. Yeah, but now I feel like I'm comfortable enough to talk to this guy about Calabasas. I bet we got a big backyard. Look at that, 8,600 square feet. Not a big setback on the home, so it's pretty close to the property line in the front. I bet they got a nice backyard. So what's important in Calabasas?
Wide open space.
Big backyard, probably as families, like, that's where we should go. Plus, we've got 2 examples already of properties that are probably about $2 million, or we're gonna get 885, something like that. 2 million is gonna get you about 8,200 a month in rent in Calabasas. Now, I feel like, I know like going in, sale price per square foot, got kind of an idea on those purchase prices, what we're gonna get in rent. I've already decided in my brain that like, Calabasas ain't so bad compared to Westlake. Probably gonna get a little bit better rent here, right, than we are in Westlake. There's more renters for Calabasas, although it's only 5 or 6 miles down the freeway. 5 or 6 miles closer to Los Angeles. So we go 5 more miles into LA down the 101. Then like now we're looking at what, Encino? Where are the rents in Encino on a $2 million home? Better, but we're giving up our public school, our good public high school by getting in there. So I asked this guy, why do you like public high schools? And he said, I've seen lots of people leaving the city since COVID, and they're going to places that have really good schools. And I said, I actually agree with you. Westchester blew up. There's a community like just north of the airport, LA City, where they've got like nationally recognized elementary and middle schools, but still not a good public high school. Right? So I said, I've seen Westchester go gangbusters, get super expensive in the last 18 months. I agree with you. And I also feel like your assertion about high schools and over the next 10 years, I think public high schools are going to become like increasingly higher in demand than they are right now. And all these people in all these public schools with really good elementary schools may be looking at moving to get their kids into a better high school. Maybe they won't. I don't know. It's tougher to move a high school kid than it is an elementary school kid. You get a little bit more pushback from your 16-year-old than your 5-year-old. Maybe not. I don't know. But now I feel like I know enough about Calabasas. So, do we have stories yet about Calabasas though? And can I really convince this client that this is where they should put their $4 million? Do I know enough about Calabasas? Jennifer said we need to know the rents. For sure, we need to know the rents. We're talking single family rentals with an investor, right? But what else is going to make this investor comfortable to work with us first, but then after that to purchase in the neighborhood? How good is the school? This was his second criteria. The first thing he gave us was single family rental. The second thing was really good high school. I don't know how to, right now, going into this, determine whether or not Calabasas is a really good public high school. But I think it's going to be worth 30 minutes of your time. So I would say to check it out. See if you can figure that out. I know it just clipped off. But we're about to wrap this up. So actually, let's go ahead. I'll click it up. And then I got to figure out how to do this. Photo.
So how did you find out whether the high school is great or not? They have great rating system.
Yeah. I think Better Schools is one of them.
First name one.
I think so. Here's US News and World Report. I don't know. I think it's Great Schools though.
Yeah, it's great.
That's the one.
US News.
Yeah, Great Schools is the one. So there we go. It's an 8 out of 10. And then I might just like, it's an above average high school. See what Hermosa Beach looks like. mean, the one for Hermosa Beach is this, Mira Costa. The 9 out of 10. So how important is that extra 10% on his cash flow comparison to his purchase price? Don't really know. I don't know. So here we are, we're an hour and a half into our, or what, an hour into our analysis for our investor? Something like that, an hour and 15 minutes, maybe we've been working on this one particular thing, and I've been just like talking, right? Like, maybe we're an hour and 15 minutes into this, do we feel like we've got Calabasas pretty much down? Yeah, we're ready to have a conversation about it? Getting there, right? But someone shows up at $4 million, we all said we're willing to stay up 5 days in a row for this. Make sure you put the time and effort and energy into this for when you go to talk to this person. You're showing buyers around in an open house, and you go with your buyers and you don't know what schools are in the area, what the property taxes are gonna look like in that price range. You don't know what the mortgage is gonna be if they're gonna borrow $2 million. These are all things that I'm not gonna be able to explain to you, and like your mentor or anyone's gonna say, you need to know what this is, but you have to have this like obsessive curiosity about real estate for you to be a really, really good agent. You have to be willing to put time in to learn about your farm, if you're doing a specific territory, learn about your specific asset class, if you're just gonna do condos, you're just gonna do, yes.
How far do you usually check with the areas? What areas do you usually?
Most of what I work on is stuff in the west side, but like this house that I manage in Hermosa Beach, when I was working with that buyer, I looked at everything. I probably spent 6 hours on a Saturday looking at Hermosa, Manhattan Beach, anything that like I have an idea is pretty close. There's the better answer to that would be, it totally depends on how specific that property is. So I have a client now, just because that's a really good question. I've got a client now who's looking at this home in Altadena. So her question was like, how far when you pull the comps, how far when you go to do research, how far out do you look? So I'm pulling this up. I actually submitted an offer on this on Thanksgiving for my buyer. It's a home in Santa Rosa, or on Santa Rosa Avenue in Altadena. But this is a very, very special home. You're about to see why. So this street, Santa Rosa Avenue, is referred to as the tree line street. It's actually just. So this is the home behind this double gate. But see this street? Big wide street. And they've got these beautiful trees that have been there for probably some of them 100 years. They're lit by the city, and in like the holiday time, people actually drive from all over the place just to walk up and down the street and drive and see these streets. What's that? Santa Rosa Avenue in Altadena. The other reason that it's so special is because this home has a massive lot, almost 27,000 square feet. So what you see down here is just the front yard. Old home, lots of character. It's got a casita, like basically a whole separate guest house. was renovated a few years ago. Which has like some positive things about it, some drawbacks. Big old basement. Wait till you see this shot though. Look at that massive lot. Huge driveway, huge front yards behind this big gate. When you stand on that property, all you see is just trees everywhere. It's totally private, beautiful. Home like this, a lot like this in Beverly Hills would be $30 million. So, but it's this really old house, right? Like it doesn't have a pool. It's not really updated except for very recently. The bathrooms were done. In Altadena, from a price per square foot standpoint, everything is kind of like, there's some really rough parts. There's some areas like this neighborhood that's very, very luxury. But when I looked at the comps for this property, it's kind of tough. So the client says, hey, you know, is this worth 2.65? What's a below average answer? I think so. Right? What would be an elite answer? I think it's worth this, and this is why. These are the best comps that support it. Here's what's different about these homes. This is the price per square foot. This is who bought those homes, right? Like you can, if you get way in there, then I'm gonna have a better understanding, but sometimes it's hard. What if I'm selling on a 6,000 square foot lot, a 5,500 square foot modern box that's a 5-bed, 5.5 bath in West Hollywood? How far out am I gonna need to go to find another 6,000 square foot, 50 by 120, new construction home? It's 2 stories, like across the street, you know?
Something like that, it's just like from the price point, or it's you're just doing research and just came along, is this something that works?
When I look for comps, I try to find the 6 closest homes to that property. So if this investor says, I want to look, you know, find me a good rental, right? I'm gonna take this property in Calabasas probably that got 8,500 to 3,400 square feet. It's like, this is a really good price per square foot on the rent. And this is what I would identify as a really good opportunity for you. Now, it's not on the market, it's not available, right? But is this kind of what you're thinking here? And if it is, right, then I'm gonna set a tighter, I erased it, right? I'm gonna set a tighter criteria and tighter parameters so that I know when one of those becomes available, or so that I can limit my search to only those ones that I think make sense. Because we have that house in Calabasas, but what if I go way up into like deep Calabasas, far off of the freeway, like up into Mulholland, like way up here? Is that gonna be a good comp from a rental perspective for everything that we saw, this 85, 8,000, 79.50, everything right there? You know what I mean? So the short answer is, how far do you go out? However far you need to get to 5 or 6 really good ones. Same thing for time. So this property for Altadena is a really good example of like having to go super far out, and like you're gonna have to really work to make some assumptions. Fernando, let's go this way. Yeah. So what if I just did this and I said, okay, cool, it's 27,000 square feet on the lot. Let's look at everything from 24,000 to 30,000. That sold by default, it's in the last 90 days. That's all I got to work with. One up there for 2.4 is 4.4, 3,000. This one is 2.7, 2. $2.8 million. We're gonna throw this one out. What's that? It's probably just land, tiny tear down, right? Can't use that as a comp. Can I use something over here on the other side of the freeway? Probably not. You know, this community in Altadena is a little bit more different. So we're gonna guess something, so 2.4 big yard, okay, this is kind of close. Do we think this is close enough? Single story, updated, it's only 3,000 square feet instead of 4, but it's done. And it's done nicely. So we look at this one, we find it's 2.4. We pull this other one down to 2.77, which that ends up being the closest comp. We look at this one for 2.8. Do I really have 6 properties that I can use here? Nah, so we need to go a little bit farther back. Or we need to expand the size of that lot a little bit more until we get something that can help us give a better idea. So like, you just look at this, like we don't know enough about Altadena on those 3 properties. So if we really want to talk Calabasas, and we pick Calabasas, I can't just pick 3 to decide my opinion. But if we don't know if he's gonna lean towards higher price point, more dense population, Hermosa Beach, or larger lot, big family community, South Pasadena, or if he's gonna go Calabasas, like I'm gonna look a little bit at each. I'm gonna go a little bit faster because I'm not teaching. I'm probably gonna spend 30 minutes on each little neighborhood. I'll pick and pull 1 or 2 properties, say, hey, this is what's on the market, this is about what it'll lease for. This is what's on the market, this is about what it'll lease for. This is on the market, this is about what it'll lease for. When are you coming down south so that we can go on a tour? That's like what my next call is gonna look like. And so, and tonight, like I already did Calabasas, thanks guys, but I'm gonna go do the other 2 neighborhoods because I don't want him to pick up the phone and say like, well, I was looking more at Santa Monica. I better have a Santa Monica story because I'm not prepared for that conversation. What am I gonna say about Santa Monica?
Nice environment, you know,
No, we can't do Santa Monica.
okay.
We only got $2 million. What I'm gonna say is, I think Santa Monica is a great neighborhood, right? A client of mine just put a property under contract in Santa Monica on Berry Avenue. It's technically West LA, but people consider it Santa Monica, right? Sat it on the market for a little bit, 3.2, 3.3. They dropped it to 2.995. Now they have an offer in the really high 2.8s, but that's only gonna lease for maybe 11 or 12,000. So under $3 million, it's not a really good rent to purchase price ratio. Like, are you telling me, right? Or what I'm hearing from you is that you like Santa Monica because it's a more well-known area, right? It's more affluent, right? The homes are in greater demand, right? So what I'm gathering is that you must be a really long-term holder and you're not as sensitive to the cash flow, right? Is that the case? Is that what you're telling me? And he'll say something like, I've heard of Santa Monica and it sounds like that's where you would want to be. And so there are a lot of people that want to be in Santa Monica. It isn't really high demand, but if you're looking for value add single family, you're going to hold this for 5 years or 10 years, or I know you're paying cash. And if you're going to refinance when the rates come back down, whenever that is, and however far back down they are, right? Then like, I would look at some of these other opportunities instead. You want to go to Santa Monica because your mom lives there, your girlfriend or your friend or your brother, whatever, then I already didn't spend too much time on this. Right? He's giving me this curveball, and I have an opinion about Santa Monica. Thank God. Right? He thinks I know. I looked into Santa Monica before I narrowed it down to these 3 cities. You know what I mean? That guy says Santa Monica, and I go, well, you know what? I'm not so sure about Santa Monica. He might call my client and say like, hey, does this guy really know what he's doing? And I lost that business. So you're going to get to a point with some client or potential client at some time in your career, and you're gonna feel like you wish you would have known more. And you're gonna be like, John told me to have a really good story about every one of these opportunities that is in my periphery. So like, try to learn by osmosis as much as you can. So you see something, a mountain lion attack in San Vicente, what do homes cost on San Vicente? You know? What's going on there in Brentwood? Brentwood's actually LA City, it's not its own city. And like, what's your opinion of Brentwood? Is it worth the mountain lion?
To me, it would be, but I would just want to.
Get a shotgun?
Add to some items that they happened about a month ago.
Yeah.
And in Holland about 3 weeks ago. and that's when I was here.
That's-
3 weeks ago.
It was. So my 2 cents is, if you have an opinion, right, then like you're already average or good, right? If you have a story, like a good story, then you have an opportunity to portray yourself as great or elite. So like you got a good story, but like, what does that mean? Is that affecting real estate? It's my computer shutting down. This is 4 o'clock. Okay, what was your question?
So if you didn't have the Santa Monica preference, say, and you had those 3 towns, you're saying you would take them on a tour to all 3 to figure out what he prefers rather than just ask him on the phone?
If he didn't know. My goal is to try and meet with them as fast as I can. Get, like, you tell them, you give them these little nuggets, you add a little bit of value, get the client in front of you as fast. Because then they're gonna feel like you're gonna have a better opportunity to understand the subtext behind what they say, if they're in front of you, right? So if I start speaking fast and I close my computer, I'm still telling them the same thing, but I'm like, oh, I think he's trying to get out of here. You know what I mean? So I would try to get him down, I'm trying to get him down here as fast as I can, just so that I can get in front of him. But yeah, it'd be great if I could tell him a little bit of story about each of these neighborhoods. And then he decides, okay, you're my guy, I trust you, I'm gonna use you. And so like, and we've got to get going soon. Say, okay, cool. Of these 3 options, which one do you kind of prefer? And if he says any of them, just find me the best deal, whether it's in Calabasas or Hermosa Beach or South Pasadena or not. Then we say, okay, cool. Well, I'm also going to poke around in San Marino a little bit, which is same school system as South Pasadena. You don't actually want to be in Pasadena, right? Because it includes a lot more areas that aren't as affluent, and schools aren't as good. So, does that answer your question? Kind of. No,
Yeah.
I would rather not drive him to Calabasas and all that. Am I willing to? Yeah. Will I spend an afternoon getting to the open houses at Calabasas at 11 and shuttling over to Pasadena and then the next day showing him Hermosa Beach? For sure. I would for sure do that for a $4 million.
Over having him just make the decision on the phone.
Because if he's not as informed as he thinks he is, he's over the phone, we're gonna get into escrows, he's gonna need to come down and see it, right? I wanna show him around, show him everything so he gets it, and then I can say, hey, likely I'm gonna write offers without him seeing the property, but he's gonna come down if we get an escrow. So 2 trips, probably, be my guess. But I need to get his trust enough so that I can submit an offer. So not something hits the market on Tuesday and it's hot, and it checks all our boxes. Right, we're way down in the funnel in this property. Check everything. I need you gotta trust me, we need to write this offer. And if I haven't met him in person, that's tough. Any questions? Okay, and I'll see you guys Wednesday. Okay.
Same class on this coming.
It'll be different. This is the first 2 sections of Ignite. So then I'll go a little bit more into prospecting and lead generation on Wednesday. But this is the foundation for the course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
You also mentioned about, social media, how to dress up, how to talk to guys. Is that kind of classroom?
Yep, that's a class two. That's one. Generating needs from open houses and social media is another class. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.